Hello everyone, in this tutorial we are diving into custom decal layering in Unreal Engine. This can help you bring unique, dynamic and non-destructive details to your level. It will allow you to add detail to different items in your scene by controlling which decal is visible on which items. As an example, I prepared here a small sample scene with just a couple of objects and few decals that will show you how you can use this system and why the proposed way of other tutorials that I found isn't going to help you. So I wanted to apply decals, for example, the decal on this wall with the leakage texture. I want to apply it only to the wall, but not on the floor and these elements on the floor. And the proposal of other tutorials is to select the other objects that you don't want this to be applied to find in the details panel the receive decals checkbox and uncheck it. But as you saw, when I unchecked it, I removed the ability of all these objects to receive other decals that I want to be applied to these sections. So this system will allow you to apply a decal to a specific group of objects, but not to the other. And the other objects still will be able to receive decals. Let me show you how the default behavior will be. So these are all the decals materials that I have in my scene. One is for this wall leakage texture. I have a couple of decals with rust for the metal elements in my scene. For example, you can see this rust pattern is applied on this metal sheet. There are other rust elements also on the metal sheets. And finally, I have this puddle decals on the floor. And as you can see, none of the decals is affecting the object that it doesn't have to. For example, if I change all these materials, let me open them and bring back the default material from Quixel for the decals, which is this m_ms decal. I'll parent all the decals to this selected material, which will bring back their default behavior. Let me save this. And now this would be how the scene would look like if you have the default material applied. You will have a rust decals on the floor. You will have this stretched leakage pattern on the floor as well. You will have the puddles over the elements that are sitting on the ground. So not very pretty, as you can see. So the way we'll achieve this layering system is to use a custom stencil for each object that we want to apply different decals to, and have a custom material that will take use of this custom stencil. So to start, let's go into your project settings, go into the edit menu, project settings, then go into the engine section, rendering section, and here into the engine rendering section, scroll down a bit until you find post-processing section. Inside the post-processing section, you have this custom depth stencil pass. It is probably set for you enabled. You should check enabled with stencil. Then you'll need to restart your engine and you'll have everything needed to apply this custom material, which will take into account this custom stencil. So make sure you enable this with stencil. You can also search for it here on top, write stencil, and it will find this custom depth stencil path. Pick the last option, and then you'll need to restart your engine. So after you're done with this, let's make a duplicate of this default material from Quixel, Megascans. Create a duplicate, and let's call this duplicate Decal Layers, for example. m_ms Decal Layers. Hit enter. I'll add it to my collection so it's easier to find here. So this is the default material, the first one, and the second one is the one I duplicated right now. We'll edit the second one to support this feature, and then we'll change all of our decal materials to be child of this Decal Layers new material. So let's save everything for now. Let's first parent all of these materials to our new material. So select each of the materials, open it, select this newly created Decal Layers material, and hit this arrow icon under the parent SWOT here. It will change it to the MS Decal Layers material. Hit save and do it for all the materials that you want to use this feature with. Okay, now I'm ready with all the decal materials, and let's now edit the newly created material. So inside your Quixel material, you'll see that everything here connected to the material attributes is a reroute named node. So this opacity node, it's coming from here. So here they are setting the opacity and connecting it to this named reroute node, which is called opacity. So what we want to do is edit the material here, and we'll output the new value into this opacity reroute node, and it will automatically be connected to the material attributes. So how to connect the proper value here? Let's first go into our scene, select the objects that we want to apply the decals to, and here into the details panel, let's search for stencil, and you have this custom depth stencil value. For the wall, I have set this to 1, for the metal elements, I have set this to 3, and for the floors, I have set this to 2. So I have 3 different values for the 3 type of objects, and if you go into your view mode for the viewport, and instead of lit, you go to the buffer visualization and choose the custom stencil. This will show you into your buffer the value for each of the objects. So I have a custom stencil of 1 for the walls, 2 for the ground, and 3 for the metal elements. And if I go into the newly created material right now, if I right click here, create a scene texture node, and this scene texture, instead of scene color, which is the default result of my viewport, let's choose the custom stencil, which is near the bottom. Let me move it so it's in the screen. So here it is, custom stencil. So create a scene texture node, set the scene texture ID to the custom stencil. Then, because it's a single value, we will need to mask only the first channel. Create a mask node, component mask. Choose only the red channel, so you have only one value coming out. And then create an if node. So right click, write if and create this if node. So what this if node will do is output 3 different values based on the comparison of this A and B slots here. Let's create a parameter. So hold the 1 key on your keyboard and click somewhere, and this will create this value for you with a single value element. This is a scalar node. Otherwise, you can right click, type scalar and choose this scalar parameter node. So I created it by holding the 1 key, clicking here, and now right click and convert to parameter. So this is now a scalar parameter, and I'll call it stencil ID. So this stencil ID will be a custom value that we can enter for our material, and we'll compare it with the scene texture custom stencil that's set for our objects. So connect the stencil ID parameter to the A of our if node, connect the custom stencil to B of our if node, and then we have the behaviors of the 3 types of results that we can have. So if A is greater than B and smaller than B, we'll just output an opacity of 0, so our stencil will not do anything. So let's hold again the 1 key and click somewhere in the graph, and this will create a scalar with a value of 0 by default. Let's connect this to the A greater than B and A smaller than B, less than B. And if our value of the custom stencil and the stencil ID that we have entered for the material is equal, so they're matching, we'll output the opacity that our material had by default, calculated by the Quixel material that we copied. And now export this value to this named reroute node of the opacity. Let's apply this and save our material. Again, make sure that all of your decal materials that you want to apply this feature to are parented under this new decal layers material. And if we go back into our scene, let's bring back the lit mode, you'll see that none of the decals are applied right now. So why is that? Because by default, we don't have our value for the materials that we created set properly for each object. It's set to 0 by default. So if we open our materials, you'll see that in the global scalar parameter values, we have this new stencil ID parameter. Let's mark to be able to edit it. And if I now change this value of the stencil ID parameter to 1, you can see my object that has a custom stencil ID of 1. Let's again visualize this by the custom stencil. Okay, so here where the value is 1, and if for the material of the decal I have set this value to 1, the decal is visible on this element. Here is the decal. So the decal is visible only on the objects that have this value set to 1. If I set this value to 2, now the decal is visible on the floor, but not on the wall, because the wall has value of 1 and the decal have value of 2. Let's bring this back to 1. Let's go to the next material, mark this stencil ID value and set the value to 2. Actually, in this case, it should be 3. So this rust decal is now applied to our metal object with a custom stencil value of 3, but not on the ground where we don't want to have rust because this is a stone texture. Let's do the same for the next material. For the decal again of the rust elements, it's again 3 for the metal parts. The last one is the puddle that we want to have only on the ground, and let's have the stencil ID set to 2 for the puddles. So now I have these puddle materials only on the ground. I don't want to have it on the metal objects. As you can see, if I set the value to 3, it will be only on the metal objects. If I set it to 2, it will be on the ground and it will not apply to the metal objects. So in this way, you can control which stencil are visible on which objects, and this is very useful to add details to your scene, especially if you are using, for example, PCG graph to procedurally generate a lot of decals or objects, and you don't have the ability to place them manually and be sure that they are not affecting some objects that you don't want. If you set up your materials and objects with the proper custom stencil IDs, it will all work for you and you will not have to worry of having these stretched, ugly textures where the decal is not placed the way you want. So guys, if you like this tutorial, you can subscribe to the channel, you can like this video, you can join the channel so you can get these videos to watch earlier. And if you want to support me, please use the super thanks button. This will help me a lot to continue make tutorials like this. And if you have questions or request for some tutorial features, please write in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye!